Here we are at the beginning of our next adventure. Today we're going to see Maharg's Mill and the Library of Mountain Millstones. Both these things are located in Levi Jackson State Park in London, Kentucky. Well, just a little bit further down the sidewalk here, you can see that the millstones start there. They're beside the sidewalk as you go down, but there's a sign right here. So let's read this sign before we go down and look at the millstones. All right, it reads, Millstones through the ages. The story of the millstone is a story of man's struggle against hunger. Using millstones was the best way to grind grain for over 2,000 years. An alternative method was not popularized until around 1870, when roller mills were developed that cut grains between corrugated steel rollers. Across the bridge, you will see one of the largest displays of grain milling stones in existence. Now, there's some pictures and stuff on here, and if you all want to read the rest of the sign, I'll let you hit pause and you can read it that way. Alrighty, a little further up, just coming off a bridge, you can see there are millstones on both sides of the walkway. Now, from what I've read, most of these millstones were donated by local individuals. At one time, there were hundreds of mills all across Kentucky. Every community had to have a mill. So there were plenty of these stones at one time around. And there's a bunch of them here. Let's go have a little closer look. If you can see the lines in that, but those two stones would grind together. That would crush the grain and make the flour. It looks like there are different patterns in the stones. That one's not the same as the first one we saw. There's definitely different levels of wear on each one of these stones. I'll give you a look out ahead of us here. There are just all kinds of stones out here, different shapes and sizes. Amazing. Well, we've come up a little further on the sidewalk here. We've come up and on another sign. This one kind of explains the different patterns and the lines on the millstones that we were just talking about. This sign says, dressing a millstone. Perhaps the greatest skill in milling was the ability to keep the stones in working order. Although good millstones will last for centuries, constant grinding wears them smooth. Chiseling the furrows and removing the glazed, rough, and uneven spots is known as dressing the millstone. The grooves carved in the face or the grinding surface of a millstone are called furrows. These perform the important function of distributing and cutting the grain, preparing it for grinding action which occurs on the flat surfaces known as the lands. Millstones were dressed by hand with special picks, each steady stroke removing a tiny chip from the stone. This was a tedious process that could easily take several days, depending on the size and the condition of the millstone. Notice the different styles of dressing patterns on the stones around you. Each was carved into the stone in a very precise and methodical way. Preferred patterns were passed down from one generation of millers to another, and the question of which was best was discussed and argued. All right, well, so that explains the different patterns in the millstones. All right, here's the last sign, and it reads, where did millstones come from? One of the greatest problems faced by early millers was where and how to obtain suitable millstones. Rocks of exceptional hardness were required. Since suitable rock was not locally available, a long journey in the back of an ox-driven wagon would likely be part of the history of many of the stones around you. The earliest American grain mills were equipped with millstones imported from Europe. Across the path to your right, you may have noticed two large millstones that have been pieced together from smaller rock segments. These are French burrs, composed of rocks from the famous century-old millstone quarries near Paris, France. Some of the millstones you see here were made from hard sandstone rock. A great many of them were made from conglomerate, a term for rock containing lots of small pebbles. These were sometimes called hail grit or pebble grit millstones. Although not as good as some of the imported stones for producing high-quality wheat flour, these native rocks were well suited for grinding animal feed and meal from corn for a staple pioneer food. Interesting. Walked a little further down, and here are the two millstones that they were talking about on the sign. These are the French burrs. You can see that they are made up of small individual stones put together to make millstones. These stones came all the way from Paris, France. Look at the size of these stones. And they probably came over in the 1800s. There are almost no lines left in them. But they're still here. That is absolutely amazing. Gotta wonder how that would even work. Here we are at the end of the sidewalk, and we've come to the mill. This is McHarg's Mill here in Levi Jackson Park in London, Kentucky. The building itself is not period. It was built in 1938, 1939 by the CCC. But the interior, which still grinds corn, is from a mill on Lincamp Creek near Corbin, and it dates from 1812. The stones that this mill uses are from 1805, and they were brought across the Wilderness Road. Now, this is usually open on the weekends, but I don't think it's been open this year because of the COVID problems we've been having. But we'll walk around the mill and give you a chance to have a look at it. This is what's known as a turbine type of mill. It doesn't have a water wheel on the outside. It has a turbine underneath that the water runs through. This was probably one of the most common type of mills in early Kentucky. It's the easiest to build, but it's the least efficient in using water. So let's walk around the mill and we'll have a look at the turbine and the backside of this mill. Here we are behind the mill, and you can see right there is the sluice gate that would let water in. And then there's two more up under there that they could open, one or two depending on how fast they wanted the mill to run, to let the water run through the turbine. Turbine's on the other side of the mill. We'll have to go to the other side of the mill to see it. But right here on top of the mill dam, you can see the water's up. We had some rain last night. Well, let's walk around the mill. Here we are on the other side of the mill, and listen to that water roaring over that mill dam. Just look at that. Wow, that is some power there, folks. You can look down here. Here are the two turbines that power this mill. We'd let the water in from the other side, and that would turn the turbines, which would turn those two drive shafts, which would turn the millstones up top and make the corn. Like I said, in early Kentucky, this was the type of mill that you would most likely see, but it's the least efficient in the use of water. Now, the type you're used to seeing, ones with the wheels on the side, that's much more efficient than this is and became more popular. And these slowly faded out. All right, let's have one more look at the water coming over the mill dam. And it's pretty loud here, so let's walk back and look at a few more millstones, and then we'll wrap up this adventure for today. Well, here's a few more millstones for you to look at. And I'm going to give you one more last look at the mill. And I hope you all enjoyed today's adventure. If you did, please give us a like. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so you know when we post new material. Thanks again for coming along today, and we'll see y'all next time.